Hello everyone, welcome to On Purpose Astrology. I'm Mandy Lockley. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the new moon in Sagittarius on December the 12th. But first, I want to talk about something that is happening in the sky today, a very important event. It's the 6th of December as I'm recording this and posting this video. And you'll see, if you look at the chart, we have Neptune in the 12th house. We can ignore the house placements. I've set this chart for just before I started this recording for London. So the houses will differ depending on the time of the day or where you are in the world. But you can see in this chart, in the 12th house, we have Neptune in Pisces. I've circled that there. It's the little blue trident. And you can see the S there next to it. S means, in black anyway, in a chart, means station direct. So today, Neptune stations direct in the sky. Now, what does that mean? Technically, all of the planets at some point, excluding the sun and moon, which aren't actually really planets, are they? They're the lights, right? The star and the satellite. All of the planets, from our perspective here on Earth, appear to go backwards at some point during their orbit. The slower and the more outer the planet, the longer they tend to spend in retrograde. What does retrograde mean when they look as if they're going backwards? Well, it means that we are perhaps having to go over old ground. It means that perhaps we're having to review what's happened, integrate what's happened, process what's happened, both personally in our lives, in our communities, in our families, in our relationships, and in the world in general. Particularly the outer planets, and we're talking here about Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Chiron. These are the planets of collective consciousness, but they're also the planets of individual consciousness, where they connect with our personal lives, i.e. where they connect with our personal planets in our own birth chart or in our angle or to our angles and other points in our chart. So they are all about how our consciousness evolves as we go through life and as we face the conflicts and the challenges, but also the joys and the hopes and the dreams that we go through during our life. So that retrograde period that we've been through with Neptune, as I said, it's a slow outer planet. So it's been a retrograde since June, early this year. So the middle, almost 6 months, basically. And it stations direct today. So what does this mean? Well, when a planet stations, particularly an outer planet, and I would also actually include Jupiter and Saturn in this as well, when it stations, it becomes much more intense. It's at a standstill. That's what station means, right? Pulling into the station. It's not moving at all, again, from our perspective here on Earth. So that adds to the intensity. So we're going through a period where Neptune has been inviting us to review, to reflect, to go over old ground, to process, to integrate what we've learned. Spiritually is one thing, creatively. I'll talk about some of the themes of Neptune in Pisces in a second. But it's really asking us now to pause, stop, take a moment and prepare for forward movement. There's going to be a lot more forward movement as we go into early next year as well in the outer planets. I will mention that as well towards the end. But let's focus on Neptune in Pisces. So, as I've already said, spirituality, it's in Pisces, it's in the last water sign, it's in the sign where Neptune really belongs. In the modern astrology, Pisces is ruled by Neptune. So it's in its kind of happy place, it's in its dreamy place. So it's about spirituality, it's about sensitivity, imagination, dreams. Follow your dreams, what's happening in your dreams, but also the dreams, your dreams for the future, your daydreams, what's your vision for the future? We may be contemplating that as we move into this period of standstill before we prepare, as we prepare for the forward movement. Particularly, this is relevant as we've got a new moon coming up. We're in the process of moving towards a new moon as well. Water, it's a watery planet, Neptune, Poseidon, the god of the ocean. in a water sign. So water, what is water? You know, what does water play in your life? You know, do we pollute the water? Do we look after our water? For example, we're all water, of course, in our bodies. Water is also symbolic of our emotions, the flow of our emotions, because Pisces and Neptune is very much about flowing water. So the flow of our emotions, how are our emotions flowing? Are they flowing well, or are we feeling kind of, oh, you know, it's perfectly reasonable at the moment with all the things that are going on that you might feel a bit, you know, disjointed, or you might not be feeling your feelings, or they might be coming out in ways that aren't comfortable. Neptune in Pisces invites us to sort of go with our flow, to feel our feelings. Intuition and psychic experiences. This is another thing. If you do have psychic experiences, then they might be intensified at this time as Neptune starts to go forward. Connectedness and wholeness. Pisces wants to go with the flow. It wants to connect. It wants to merge. It wants to experience that oneness. So we're going into spirituality a little bit more, but also oneness with other people, with community, with anything that's really important to you, whether that's your spirituality or whether it's your creativity, because creativity is another thing, as I've said, also associated with Neptune. So when we talk about creativity in any kind of way, any kind of creative way, you know, we think of creativity as like dancing, singing, art, music, and that kind of thing. But anything that you might do that's creative, that really puts you in that flow, is going to be good for this time. It's going to be good to make a plan for the future, to have a vision. It's going forward, is going direct Neptune during the time of Sun in Sagittarius, which is a sign of growth. Sagittarius is expansive. It's about growth. It's about optimism. It's about enthusiasm. So hopefully you will be feeling a little bit more motivation, a little bit more enthusiasm, because really it's about moving forward. Sagittarius is about moving forward. It's about having hope and faith in the future. And it's a fire sign, so it kind of fires you up and gets you going. So hopefully we will start to feel as if we have more energy, certainly after this new moon, the period just before the new moon, which we're in at the moment. So we've got 6 days before the full moon, as I record this on the 6th of December, is a time of quiet. It's a time when things are getting dark, where we can't really see what's happening. We might have a vision but not a clear idea of how we're going to get there. So it's a time to rest and look after yourself. As I said, Neptune is standing still. So stand still if you can, just kind of breathe. It's about what you yearn for as well, Neptune in Pisces. What do you yearn for? Are you romanticizing things? Are you over idealizing things? Because it's a very idealistic placement, isn't it, Neptune in Pisces? And we also have Sagittarius, Sun and Mars, as we can see there on the 8th house in Sagittarius. That's also quite idealistic in slightly different ways, but it's very idealistic as well. So are we being over idealistic and expecting too much, putting our faith and our hopes in things that might be illusions? Okay, that's another thing for Neptune in Pisces, illusions. So we need to use that intuition that comes with Pisces. If it seems too good to be true, then it probably is. Use your intuition and don't sort of sacrifice your own feelings, your own needs for something else. You may want to put your faith and hope in something bigger than yourself, but make sure it's done with discernment. So we can have disillusionment and we can have disappointment with Neptune in Pisces, hopes and assumptions that don't really measure up. We can feel like we're drowning in our feelings, and our sensitivities, extra sensitivities might come up. So those are some of the downsides. Now, you might have heard me, and you might have heard other astrologers, when they talk about a planet in a sign or an aspect or something like that in astrology, they'll talk, well, it's like this at best, or at worst, it's like this. And what I am trying to sort of tell you here in the work that I do is that we can aspire, we can choose to express the planetary alignments, the ones in the sky, of course, but also the ones that we deal with our whole life from our birth chart at best. Because as human beings, we all have our own energy vibration. The planets also have an energy vibration. And that energy vibration can be negative, it can be positive, and then it can meet somewhere in the middle. You know, everything's on a kind of spectrum. And there is an element of how we can choose. We can choose as an element of that. We can choose to use this Neptune time where it's standing still, where we're asked to sort of stop and pause and wait for the future to sort of unfold, to go with the flow, to unleash our creativity, to have a vision, to start working on our vision, even if we don't know where that's going to go, because we're bringing in that Sagittarius energy as well. So we can use it to the best, you know, that spirituality, as I said, creativity. Neptune is also about sort of showbiz. You know, if you're maybe you're involved in acting or amateur acting or something like that, it's charismatic, can be a very charismatic sign as well. So there's that kind of feeling of just being able to sort of, oh, like here I am. We talk about the illusion and the glamour of Neptune. Illusion can be that illusion of pretending to be something else, but very creatively and in a really good way at best, rather than utter deceit and lies of Neptune in Pisces. It's interesting, actually, as I'm speaking here, the British Prime Minister is speaking to a select committee, to an inquiry about how the British government handled the COVID pandemic. And this Prime Minister is known for lying. He lied about parties, he lied about lots of things, and that his lies really just took him out of government. He had to resign. So that's just on the day that Neptune in Pisces is stationary, that is making the news, which is interesting. If he had an astrologer telling him when to appear in the inquiry, he probably wouldn't have done it today, right? So really what I'm trying to do here is to tell you some of the themes of Neptune in Pisces. Hopefully some of these you can run with and flow with, and hopefully you can make the best. I think that's where astrology really works, where we can make the best of the energies, even if the energies on paper look like they might be difficult or challenging. What can we learn here? How can we express it? How can we express it with joy in our heart, with love, with gratitude, with acceptance of the lesson, with looking after ourselves, be kind and compassionate. Compassion is another thing for Neptune Pisces, but also kind and compassionate to ourselves as well as others, and as well as, animals and the world in general. So some other ideas, be near water, take a salt bath, indulge in amateur dramatics, poetry, music, art, dance, reflect, pray if that's your thing, meditate, let yourselves dream, write down your dreams, cleanse your body, cleanse your mind, breathe, 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 and be flexible and adaptable if you can. This is mutable energy we're in with Pisces and with the Sun and Mars in Sagittarius, mutable energy, which is about things changing and flowing and being able to adapt and to be able to be flexible here. Listening to your intuition, as I've said, if things are too good to be true, they possibly are. I've mentioned that. So using that discernment and that intuition. Mars in Sagittarius offers the optimism and the faith to sort of act on good things that you want to do in your future. Act on the vision. It's good energy, it's vitality. Mars brings lots of vitality in Sagittarius. So you can see it's 24, just short of 25 degrees, Neptune in the 12th house. So if there's anything in your chart in the mutables between around about 23 to 26 of the mutables, then you will obviously be having a Neptune transit. So this will be felt even more intensely, so even more reason to sort of really think and reflect about what you might do, how you might work with that energy in a more positive way, to work with the positive frequency and vibration of the planet Neptune. Now it can sometimes, the planets, sometimes we think we're doing the work and they can throw us kind of curveballs, but generally speaking, the more we learn to work with those energies, the more we can get out of it, the more we can learn, the more we can grow. And we're coming into a growth period now. We're coming into a period of change and also growth, both personal and in the world. As I said, 23 to 26 of mutables. The mutable signs are, of course, Pisces and its opposite Virgo, and then Gemini and Sagittarius, the mutable signs. So if you don't know your chart, you can download a free chart from, for example, astro.com, and you can see what you might have at those degrees of those signs. And then you'll be having, as I said, a Neptune transit. So what else is happening ahead of the new moon? Well, basically on the 4th of December, Venus went into Scorpio. I mentioned this in my last video, actually, but well, it's worth having a little bit more of a look at Venus in Scorpio, because it's in Scorpio until the end of the year, more or less. It goes out of Scorpio and into Sagittarius on the 29th of December. I've circled it there in house 7, the Venus in Scorpio there. So Venus is a sign of relationship. One of the things it's actually most well known for is the sign of relationships. You know, how you get on with other people, not just romantic relationships, but generally how you get on with other people. It's how you yield and compromise and negotiate, and how you know, have harmony with other people. But when it's in Scorpio, it's in an uncompromising sign. So you could see where there might be some difficulties there, because because Venus in Scorpio, it's not able to operate at its best. But as I've already talked about, using the planets and trying to use them and trying to be at best with the energies of the planet, even though it's more difficult with Venus in Scorpio, it actually gives us more of a challenge. It actually gives us more growth. It actually gives us more learning and gives us more opportunities, because we actually have to think about it. We actually have to consciously try and work with those energies. In traditional astrology, for those who follow traditional astrology, you'll probably know that Scorpio is the detriment of Venus. And what that means is basically it doesn't operate smoothly. It's what I've kind of already said. It doesn't operate to its best. It's not natural and smooth. It has to kind of work at it, and it can kind of go off track a little bit and, you know, cause difficulties. So let's explore a little bit more about that and what we might be able to do to work very creatively, because Venus as well is obviously about creativity as well, and aesthetics particularly. How can we work creatively with Venus in Scorpio? Well, when it comes to romance, Venus in Scorpio is looking for a soulmate. It's looking for absolute loyalty and steadfastness. It's looking to be able to trust. It can be said that Venus in some signs is too trusting, but trust is more difficult with Venus in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio often feels that they are in competition with someone or something else, because Scorpio traditionally is ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet of competition, the planet of war, the planet of fighting, the planet of asserting yourself. So this is where we can perhaps get into trouble with Venus in Scorpio by being suspicious of other people, or competing with other people, or not trusting other people. I'm not saying that you should willy-nilly put your trust in people. Again, we've already talked about using discernment and using your intuition, or where to put your trust, where to put your faith, where to put your hope and your optimism, if we're talking about using the Sagittarian energy with this as well. So we might kind of think, well, where in our lives and relationships is the drama that can, you know, there can be drama that comes with Venus in Scorpio. So if there's drama, do we really need the drama? Is it us that's making the drama, or is someone else projecting their drama onto you? I mean, these things tend to go both ways anyway. Anything with Venus tends to go both ways, because it is the planet of relationship. So think about, you know, unnecessarily drama, and what might that be compensating for? Venus is the planet of self-esteem. If there's trust issues there in relationships, what about working on your own self-esteem? And what about being discerning and putting your trust where it's really, you know, deserves to go, and trusting yourself? I don't bang on about intuition, but where you intuitively can know you can trust yourself. And if you can trust yourself more, then you can trust others, or you can trust yourself not to be taken in by people who might be doing power plays, because the other ruler of Scorpio is, of course, Pluto, the modern ruler, power and power play. So where are you in power plays with people? Let's try and use the best of Venus in Scorpio, which I'll talk about in a minute, to, to not get involved in power plays. These things tend to take two people, don't they? If you are obviously being bullied by someone else in a relationship, then of course then you must, move away from it and get help if you can, of course, as always. So the higher frequency, the higher vibration of Venus in Scorpio, well, it's that loyalty. It's also honesty. It's a very honest sign, where Venus in other signs might sort of say that, I'm thinking Libra perhaps, or Gemini, they might say what they want other people to hear, maybe for their own ends or just to please other people. The motives might be different. Whereas Venus in Scorpio tends to be very honest. So that's a really good way to use that. Just be honest about your feelings, but be kind, be compassionate. Don't use honesty to do that Mars thing of competing with someone or putting someone down or upsetting people. Very sensitive, super sensitive. Venus in Scorpio, if it's personified, is this hard sort of shell and nothing really bothers me, but deep down there's this deep, deep, deep sensitivity, because it is a water sign, of course, Scorpio. So gratitude, being grateful for what you've got, the relationship that you've had, and also the money that you have, the money that you'll earn, the assets that you might own, because that's another thing for Venus, money and assets, and just the beauty around you. Be grateful for that. That's another way to just automatically shift into the higher vibrations of Venus generally, but Venus in Scorpio. Be grateful. Give. Now, Venus is a planet that likes to give, that we talked earlier about the yielding, ideas of yielding, yielding to other people, giving, but give kindly and generously, but give wisely. Use your time and your energy and give very, very wisely. Again, use that discernment. Don't just give yourself away, because this is Neptune in Pisces, can just go, oh yeah, I surrender, I give everything away. Okay. If you feel really strongly connected to this Neptune in Pisces at the moment, think about giving wisely, holding something back if you need to, setting boundaries. Try not to be controlling, try not to let yourself be controlled. As I said, set boundaries, resist competing with others, as I've already said, resist igniting rivalries, because that Mars rulership, that Pluto secondary rulership of Scorpio here. Now, one of the best things we can do really is to tap into the transformative and healing energies, transformative and healing vibrations of the sign of Scorpio. We think of Scorpio as a scorpion, but it's also the eagle is the other significator for Scorpio. The eagle flies high, it flies free, it's majestic, it's beautiful, it's healing. It's the bigger promise, isn't it there? That's the bigger promise of the rulership of Pluto. So trying, if you can take a beat, take a rest, take a stop, take a breath, and try and meditate into that Neptune in Pisces healing energy and that Venus in Scorpio healing energy. That's a good way that you can use it. And that will, of course, improve your relationships. And the more we improve our relationships, the more our relationships improve. And this spreads out into the world in general as well. So let's go to the new moon then. So the new moon, here we go, on the 12th of December. For this chart, it's at the bottom of the chart. You can see here, I put it in a square, the moon and the sun at 20 to 21 degrees of Sagittarius, with a wide conjunction to Mars in Sagittarius. And we can see there's a square to Neptune that we've just talked about at length. So again, we're talking about the mutable signs. We're talking about Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces. So if you've got anything really, if you want to bring into it the Mars as well, if you've got anything between the 13 degrees and 21 degrees of those mutable signs, you can be affected by this, particularly by this new moon. So what does Sagittarius bring? In my last video about Sagittarius season, I spoke in length about Sagittarius, but some ideas. It's optimistic, it's enthusiastic, spirited, it's the fire sign, of course, creative, dynamic. It likes a vision a vision for the future. It's ruled by the expansive planet of Jupiter. Jupiter expands and grows, and anything that it touches gets bigger or feels bigger or seems bigger with Sagittarius. Okay, so as I said, that Mars in Sagittarius adds some vitality into the mix. You know, we need to think about how we can use that Mars, which is the ruler of this Venus in Scorpio, as I've just talked about, how we can use that positively to add that enthusiasm, that need for action. Now, action isn't a word we normally associate with a new moon, because the new moon is a time for quiet. It's just the dark of the moon. So it's a time for planning, and it's a great time actually to start planning for the new year, when the new year comes around, with having a vision. This is a lot about what Jupiter and Sagittarius is all about. It's a vision for the future, because things will start to move forward in the new year. As I've just said, Neptune is now going forward from, well, it stations direct on the 6th of December, and it's going forward by the time, you know, properly going forward by the time we get to the new moon on the 12th. We see Pluto going forward, headed towards Aquarius. Saturn is going forward. Jupiter is going forward. It's actually, no, Jupiter isn't going forward, but Uranus will be going forward by the end of January. So we're going to have a lot more forward movement in the sky. We had a period not long ago where all the outer planets were going retrograde, as I said. So we're going over old ground, integrating, processing, revising, things kind of going more slowly, things not going forward as much as we'd like. So it's a good time under this new moon. It's the last new moon of the calendar year, so it's a great time to start planning for the future. But bearing in mind that a new moon is always a seeding time. It's not a time where we'll have instant manifestation. What we plant now is a time when we can just, you know, we can expect to see growth in the future, and growth is very much forecast if we plant correctly, if we plant in the right way, if we plant in the, you know, with integrity and in alignment with what we want to achieve, and in alignment with how we want to be and how we want to grow positively into the new year and beyond. So remember the advice for Neptune in Pisces that I've already talked about at the beginning of this video, because we've got that square. So a square always brings a little bit of tension. Okay, so that tension between my dreams and the reality, and the illusion and the vision, and what can I achieve, and that kind of thing. Sagittarius is optimistic. It can be overly optimistic. It can take on too much. So if we're going to use that Sagittarian energy of this new moon wisely, wisdom is a really good keyword for Sagittarius. Use it wisely. This is very much a good signature for this topic that I've been talking about in this video for this current astrology. Wisdom. Where have you learned wisdom? Where have you, where do you want to go, and how can you grow based on what you know you've already achieved, or what you can achieve? You can probably achieve a lot more than you think you can. You can probably have a lot more creativity. Many of us think we're not very creative because, I don't know, we can't sing, or we can't dance, or we can't do a painting or whatever. Creativity is about everything that we do. It's about how we solve problems. It's about how we operate in day to day. Every time we make a cup of tea for ourselves or for someone else, we are creating something. Every time we make a dinner you know, we are creating something. This is an act of creativity, making this video. It's an act of creativity, you watching this video. Everything is an act of creativity. So get away from the idea that it is, you know, oh, I'm not a creative person. We are all creative people. I mean, we all, many of us produce children. I mean, what is more creative than being able to produce new life? I mean, that's an absolute miracle. So being creative. Another thing for Sagittarius is integrity, absolute integrity. Be in your integrity. What are your values? Think about what your core values are. I mean, that's another good thing, another good exercise for Venus in Scorpio. What are your core values, and where have you where might you be misaligning with your core values in your relationships, in your work, in your personal life, for example? This is another good way to sort of reset. So what are your values, and how are you acting in integrity? Have faith. Faith is another good word for Sagittarius. We talked about Neptune being associated with spirituality, and Jupiter is about faith. So you might have spiritual experiences, or might want to, but you know, where does your faith lie? What do you believe in? Do you believe in it? Or is it just dogma? Are you just following rules that have been set by other people? So being in your own integrity, and what do you believe in, and why do you believe in it? So have faith, but not dogma. As I've already said, a vision for the future for the new year. It's a good time to set those goals, because a vision needs goals, it needs practical goals. So we look at the rule of Sagittarius, it's in the earth sign of Taurus. That's great for setting goals. It's great for actually grounding that vision down into practical realities as well. So these are some good ways you can use the energy, the vibrations, the frequencies of the planet to really get ahead, really. Sagittarius wants to get ahead of itself. That's another thing. Be careful. Don't get too ahead of yourself. We are in that time of slowing down, because have we have a new moon, and then we go into the holiday, the festive season. And again, that's a time when we stop our daily life. For many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, we stop our daily life and do something different. We have that kind of rest, or it might not be a rest. It might just be something different, of course. So hold on to your vision. Okay. And then we'll also see that on this chart we have Mercury. It's not at the bottom of the chart here in house 4, so it's right next to the sun, although it's not close enough to be in a conjunction. It's in Capricorn, Mercury, and it's stationed retrograde, which means that Mercury will be going retrograde until the 1st or 2nd of January, depending on where you are in the world. 1st or 2nd of January. Again, another reason for this time to be one of reflection and planning, and you know, using, you know, all that Neptune stuff that we've been talking about, all the relationship we've been talking about with Venus in Scorpio, to be reflecting, to be really doing a bit of healing on ourselves. At the end of the year, many of us are really tired, and we do need to heal from all the things that might have happened to us during the year. So Mercury in retrograde supports that. So really, we start the new year, as I've already said, with most of the outer planets going direct, and also Mercury going direct. Mercury is the fastest moving planet. Obviously, the moon, etc., and the sun are faster, but it's an actual planet rather than a satellite or a star. And Mercury is the fast moving. It's a personal planet. So it kind of supports, gets things going come the 1st of January, 2nd of January. There is a period of a week or two where it's said to be in the shadow of its retrograde. So it takes a little bit of time to ramp up, but really we can go into January, hopefully, with quite a bit of optimism, enthusiasm. And we're looking forward, obviously, to Pluto going into Aquarius at the end of January. And then it'll go back for a little while. I think it might be June. It's in I think it's in Aquarius till June, from end of January till June, and then it goes back again for a final pass into the last degree or two of Capricorn, and then in November next year it goes into Aquarius for the long run till 2024. So that's momentous. So let's use this period really to recharge our batteries, to enjoy this new moon. I know it's a stressful period for a lot of people. I remember when I used to work in an office in a corporate job, it was very intense in the run up to the holiday season because you've got to get everything done, and then you've got to party, you've got to do all the shopping, you've got to prepare for spending time with family and for making dinners, and and there's a lot going on. But if you can take some time for yourself, be kind and compassionate to yourself if you can, because we really are in a period that if we handle it wisely over the next, until the end of this year and then into early next year, where we can really set ourselves up, get started to set ourselves up for positive transformations. There's a lot going on in the world that might seem very negative, but if we are committed to using our own energies, the energies of the planets in the most positive ways that we can, the most positive ways that we can think of, while at the same time being kind and compassionate to ourselves and to others, we really can all make a huge difference. I will be back to talk about the solstice, which is when the sun goes into Capricorn. The solstice point's very important. It's the winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere. In the southern, it'll be the summer solstice. But for now, I wish you a loving and compassionate and restive and really relaxing period full of love and kindness for yourselves and others. And thanks for watching. You can subscribe below. Thank you. I've grown in my subscribers. It's still a fairly new channel. I'm really grateful to all of you subscribed. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and check out my website. So again, thank you so much. And as always, with love, Mandy. Thank you. Bye-bye.